For more than 4,000 years, the pyramids of Egypt have stood in the desert as one of the most astonishing achievements in human history. Even today, with all our modern machines, cranes, and engineering knowledge, people still struggle to fully understand how these structures were built with such precision and scale. The Great Pyramid of Giza alone contains over 2 million stone blocks, each carefully shaped, transported, and placed with a level of accuracy that still amazes engineers and archaeologists around the world. To understand how the pyramids were built, we have to go back to ancient Egypt, around 2600 BC during the time of the Old Kingdom. Egypt at this time was one of the most powerful and organized civilizations on Earth. Life revolved around the Nile River, which provided water, fertile soil, and transportation. Without the Nile, there would be no Egypt as we know it. The river was the center of agriculture, trade, and communication, and it allowed the civilization to grow wealthy and stable enough to support massive construction projects. At the top of Egyptian society stood the pharaoh, a ruler believed not just to be a king, but a living god. Everything in Egyptian society was built around the idea of maintaining order in the universe, and the pharaoh was responsible for preserving that order. When a pharaoh died, it was believed that his spirit would travel to the afterlife and continue to rule in a different form. But this journey was dangerous, and the pharaoh needed a perfect tomb to protect his body and guide his soul. This belief is what led to the creation of the pyramids. They were not just tombs in the way we think of graves today. They were machines for immortality, designed to preserve the pharaoh's body and ensure his rebirth in the afterlife. The shape itself had meaning. The pyramid may have represented the rays of the sun or the sacred mound from which life first emerged according to Egyptian mythology. But the pyramids did not appear suddenly in their final form. Before the Great Pyramid of Giza, there was a long evolution of tomb building. Early Egyptian kings were buried in simple rectangular structures called mastabas. These were made of mud brick and placed over underground burial chambers. Over time, architects began stacking mastabas on top of each other, which eventually led to the creation of the first pyramid. This breakthrough came with the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, designed by the architect Imhotep. This structure was revolutionary because it was the first large-scale building in the world made entirely of stone. Instead of mud brick, limestone blocks were used, making the structure far more durable. The step pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a statement of power, innovation, and religious belief. It showed that Egyptian architecture had entered a completely new era. After Djoser's pyramid, construction techniques continued to evolve. Over the next generations, Egyptian engineers experimented with different pyramid shapes, gradually smoothing the steps into the smooth-sided pyramids we recognize today. This process eventually led to the construction of the pyramids at Meidum and Dahshur, including the bent pyramid, which shows clear evidence of engineering adjustments during construction. These early attempts were crucial learning experiences that helped the Egyptians understand how to build on a massive scale. Then came the most famous pyramid of all, the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu. This structure represents the peak of Egyptian pyramid construction. It originally stood around 147 meters tall and remained the tallest human-made structure in the world for nearly 4,000 years. Even today, it is one of the most precise and well-aligned structures ever built. The base of the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly level, with only a very small variation across its entire length. The sides are aligned almost exactly with the cardinal points of the compass: north, south, east, and west. This level of precision raises an important question. How did the ancient Egyptians achieve such accuracy without modern tools? The answer lies in a combination of careful observation, simple but effective tools, and enormous human effort. The Egyptians were skilled astronomers. They studied the stars and used them to determine direction. One theory suggests that they aligned the pyramid using the circumpolar stars that never set, marking true north with impressive accuracy. They also used tools like plumb bobs, leveling instruments, and measuring ropes to ensure geometric precision. But building the pyramid was not just about alignment. The real challenge was construction itself. The Great Pyramid is made of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons on average. Some internal granite blocks weigh even more, reaching up to 70 tons. These stones had to be quarried, transported, lifted, and placed with extreme care. Most of the limestone used in the pyramid came from quarries near Giza itself. Workers used copper tools, stone hammers, and dolerite balls to break limestone away from the bedrock. Copper was a relatively soft metal, so it had to be sharpened and replaced often, but it was still effective for cutting limestone. For harder stones like granite, they used pounding stones made of even harder rock. Transporting these stones was another major challenge. The ancient Egyptians likely used a combination of sledges, boats, and human labor. The Nile River played a crucial role. During the annual flooding season, parts of the landscape became accessible by water, allowing boats to transport heavy stone blocks much closer to the construction site than would otherwise be possible. Some evidence even suggests that a now-dried branch of the Nile once ran closer to the Giza Plateau, making transport even easier than it is today. Once the stones reached land, they had to be dragged across the desert. One of the most interesting discoveries in modern archaeology is that sand, when slightly moistened, becomes much easier to move across. Ancient tomb paintings show workers pouring water in front of sledges carrying heavy statues. Experiments have confirmed that this reduces friction and makes it significantly easier to pull heavy loads. Thousands of workers organized into teams could have moved massive stones using ropes and sledges across prepared pathways. The next challenge was lifting the stones as the pyramid rose higher. This is one of the most debated aspects of pyramid construction. The most widely accepted explanation is that ramps were used. However, the exact design of these ramps is still uncertain. Some researchers propose a long, straight ramp extending from the ground to higher levels of the pyramid. Others suggest zigzagging ramps that wrapped around the structure. Another theory involves a spiral ramp that circled the pyramid as it grew taller. Each of these theories has strengths and weaknesses, and it is possible that more than one method was used at different stages of construction. What is clear is that the Egyptians had to carefully balance the slope of the ramp. If it was too steep, workers could not pull the stones. If it was too shallow, the ramp would need to be extremely long and require enormous amounts of material. As the pyramid rose, the workforce would have been highly organized. Contrary to older beliefs, the pyramids were not built by slaves in chains. Archaeological evidence shows that workers lived in planned settlements near the construction site. They were fed, cared for medically, and buried respectfully. Many were likely farmers who worked on the pyramids during the Nile flood season when their fields were underwater. These workers were skilled laborers, organized into crews with specific tasks. Some cut stone, others transported it, and others focused on placing and aligning the blocks. There was likely a strict system of supervision and planning, similar in some ways to a modern construction project, but on a far larger scale. As each layer of the pyramid was completed, the interior chambers and passageways were also constructed. The internal structure of the Great Pyramid is complex, with descending and ascending corridors, a grand gallery, and burial chambers deep within the stone. The precision required for these internal spaces is just as impressive as the exterior construction. The final stages of construction involved finishing the outer casing. Originally, the Great Pyramid was covered in smooth white limestone casing stones that reflected sunlight and made the structure shine brilliantly across the desert. At the very top, a capstone would have completed the pyramid, possibly covered in gold or electrum, creating a glowing beacon visible from far away. Over time, most of the casing stones were removed or eroded, which is why today the pyramids appear rough and stepped. Earthquakes, quarrying, and centuries of exposure have also changed their appearance. But even in their current state, they remain one of the most impressive architectural achievements in human history. Despite all the research, experiments, and discoveries, we still do not know every detail of how the pyramids were built. There are gaps in the evidence, and some mysteries remain unsolved. But what we do know is already extraordinary. The pyramids were not built with lost advanced technology or outside intervention. They were built by human intelligence, organization, belief, and determination. They represent what a civilization can achieve when it combines scientific understanding, engineering skill, and a shared purpose that spans generations. In the end, the pyramids are not just stone monuments. They are a message from the past, telling us that even thousands of years ago, humans were capable of extraordinary things when they worked together toward a single goal.